So this morning is about service in the family. Why talk about serving in the family? I'd like to share a quote here from Adventist Home. Society is composed of families, and it is what the heads of families make it. Out of the heart are the issues of life, and the heart of the community, the church, and the nation is the household. The well-being of society, the success of the church, the prosperity of the nation depend upon home influences. The elevation or deterioration of the future of society will be determined by the manners and morals of the youth growing up around us. As the youth are educated and as their characters are moulded in their childhood to virtuous habits, self-control and temperance, so will their influence be upon society. If they are left unenlightened and uncontrolled, as the result, become self-willed, intemperate in appetite and passion, so will be the future influences in moulding society. The company which the youth now keep, the habits they form now, and the principles they now adopt are the index to the state of society for years to come. So we see here that at the very basic element in society is the family unit. And families, of course, can be all sorts of shapes and sizes. It can be a single household. It can be two people sharing a home. It can be a couple. It can be a family. It can be a broken family. But nonetheless, it is a unit, and it is a family nonetheless. And what we make of it determines what society will be. So, of course, in a Christian context today, we're going to be looking at how we can make the family unit or Christian unit a success. Now, of course, Christ, he came to this world as a representative of the Father. And whatever his example was, we can take in every aspect of our life. But the starting point of how a family works best was given long before Christ even came to this world. When God gave his commandments, an index of his character, and an advice how a successful society will be, right in the middle of those commandments is, of course, to honour our father and mother. What does this word honour mean? Honour is a very high regard for something, and such should be the responsibility of children, to honour parents. Now, Sister White in Patriarchs and Prophets summarised this beautifully in one sentence, what this means to honour our parents. The fifth commandment requires children not only to yield respect, submission, and obedience to their parents, but also give them love and tenderness, to lighten their cares, to guard their reputation, and to succour or help and comfort them in old age. So if you wanted to understand the breadth of that, you have it right there. Now, there are some very worthy examples in the Bible of people who honoured their parents. And I chose two this morning to just And I chose these two because I guess sometimes we think our lives are too busy, or our problems, our challenges are too big to have time to properly honour our parents. The first example here is from King Solomon. Kings are busy, should be busy. Good kings will be busy. And here in 1 Kings chapter 2, verse 19, we read an experience when Solomon's mother came to the palace. It says here, Bathsheba therefore went unto King Solomon to speak unto him for Adoniah. And the king rose up to meet her, and bowed himself unto her, and sat down on his throne, and caused the seat to be set for the king's mother, and she sat on his right hand. King Solomon, Sister White says, the wisest and most exalted monarch that ever sat on an earthly throne, has given us an example of filial love and reverence. He was surrounded by his courtly train, consisting of the wisest sages and counsellors, yet when visited by his mother, he laid aside all the customary ceremonies attending the approach of a subject of an oriental monarch. The mighty king, in the presence of his mother, was only her son. His royalty was laid aside. As he rose from his throne and bowed before her, he then seated her on his throne at his right hand. So we should honour our parents, no matter what our position. Now, we also have Joseph. Joseph, we know the story of Joseph. It's one of my favourite stories in the Bible. But when he became second in charge of Egypt, and his father came, let's read the encounter here in Genesis 46, 29 and 30. And Joseph made ready his chariot and went to meet Israel his father, to Goshen, and presented himself unto him. And he fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while. And Israel said unto Joseph, Now let me die, since I have seen thy face, because thou art yet alive. And in commentary of this, another striking point in the character of Joseph, worthy of imitation by all youth, is his deep filial reverence. As he meets his father with tears streaming from his eyes, he hangs upon his neck in an affectionate, loving embrace. He seems to feel that he cannot do enough for his parents' comfort, and watches over his declining years with a love as tender as a mother's. No pain is spared to show his respect and love on all occasions. Joseph is an example of what youth should be. Love manifested to your mother would disclose a beautiful trait of character such as God would approve. So this is responsibility of children to honour parents. What's the responsibility of parents in the home? Let us turn our Bibles here to Deuteronomy chapter 6. I'll start reading from verse 4, because this was effectively God speaking to Israel through Moses. Deuteronomy 6, verse 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto the children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. Thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thy hand, and they shall be as frontlets between thine eyes. So how can parents serve children? Is to teach the love of God to them. And if we read before here, the commandments had just been presented to Israel. And they were summarized in love for God, with all soul, with all thy might. Now, the Bible here could have said, and teach them to your children continually. Because effectively, when you read it, it's, when you get up, when you lie down, when you walk, when you sit, right? But I wanted to just have you just think a little bit more about these aspects of this verse. So when you rise up, if you're going to be teaching the love of God to your children, practically what is this? Right? This can be morning worship, right? When you rise up. Now, when you sit down, practically, how can you do this? You can have meals together. Right? You can talk about the challenges of the day. At the end of the day, you can talk about, plans and so on earlier in the day. And in everything, you can see and explain God's hand in these things. And of course, one of the challenges today, right, is to find the time to have morning worship and to have meals together, all together. But this was the formula, right, way back. And then it says, when you walk by the way, go on walks together. Today perhaps we're not walking around the farm, all of us, right? Even farmers these days, with machinery and, spread out, everyone doing different things. But you can find time to walk together. And Sister White made a particular point to spend some time as a family in nature on Sabbaths, because nature is an evidence of God's creation. And so the Sabbath was the end of the creation week, and you connect everything, and you become close to the eternal when you see the scenes of nature together. So you can walk together and talk. When thou liest down, the time is golden just before you sleep. You can open the heart to each other, and you can share. You can share your joys, you can share your challenges. And a simple conversation together before you go to bed is, what was good about the day? What did you learn? Or what did we learn? And what can we do better? There's your agenda, right? Open-ended questions. and these can stimulate conversation that has to be shut down because the night draws on. I wanted to just emphasize this. So when we read this, don't think that this is some, unfortunately, when it says, bind these things upon your hand and upon, the Jews had ways of kind of literally trying to do this by putting the commandments in little scrolls and putting them in leather bags and strapping them to their arms. And they'd walk this and they'd have them. Right, and Jesus even commented on this when he was here on earth, saying, people are proud about these things, right? But that was not the point. It was to be close to your heart, right? A couple of other responsibilities here now. So parents have authority in the home. God commands the children to honour. How should this authority be exercised? So what's the objective, right? As leaders of the home, parents in the home, what's their responsibility? What's the outcome you're trying to achieve? How can you best serve your family? The outcome you're trying to achieve, right, is a little heaven on earth. If you had a mission statement, or you want to create a little heaven on earth. Now, what is heaven? Heaven is a place of love. It's a place of care. It's a place of, because God is love and God is there. So, how do we create a little heaven on earth? Well, Sister White gives some insight here. The atmosphere that surrounds the souls of the fathers and mothers fills the whole house, and is and is felt in every department of the home. So, if you surround yourself with the right attitude, with the right kind of system and the governance of yourself, how you govern yourself, right? How you order yourself and how you go about things is going to set the tone of the home. To a large extent, parents create the atmosphere of the home circle. And when there is disagreement between father and mother, the children partake of the same spirit. Make your home atmosphere fragrant with tender thoughtfulness. If you have become estranged and fail to be Bible Christians, what's the solution if the parents are estranged? Is the one, just be converted. So we have a personal responsibility to be converted, to be right with God, and then to bring this between us as parents into the family. Every Christian home should have rules. Now, why do we have laws in society, right? To have order, to have a place that people love to get about, right? Society has rules, and the home should have rules. And parents should, in their words and deportment towards each other, give the children a precious living example of what they desire to be. Purity in speech and true Christian courtesy should be constantly practiced. Teach the children to respect themselves, to be true to God, true to principle, and teach them to respect and obey the laws of God. That is the ultimate happiness. Happiness is when we are within God's law. When we're trying to, cut corners and, push boundaries, and invariably we're going to come to grief. And unhappiness is the sure result of sin. The Bible is full of examples of this. Now, life is simple, right? Life is easy. and there will never be any problems that come into our lives or into our families, right? Is that the case? Right? Malcolm Fraser, Prime Minister of this land, famously said life was not meant to be easy, right? And Sister White mentioned that troubles may invade, right? Every home will have troubles. Troubles may invade, but these are the lot of humanity, right? We're not in heaven yet. The devil has not yet been destroyed, right? He has deceived 1/3 of heaven, right? He is masterful in how he works. So troubles will come. But let patience, gratitude, and love keep sunshine in the heart through the day, though the day may ever be so cloudy. Now, stress. One stress, and particularly, here in Sydney, right, as house prices keep going up over the years, when my parents migrated to Australia, you could buy a house with a certain multiple of wages, right? And as the years go on, that multiple of wages goes up. Then as we had double income households, right, you had earned more income coming into the house from 2 wages, that multiple has gone up, right? So house prices now are at a historic high as a multiple of combined disposable income of a home, right? And this can put a lot of stress. You've got to take in big debt, and then you've got the interest payment every month, and so what's my quick fix? I don't have one, right? I don't have one. However, one thing that can take some stress off is to just adjust your expectations to be realistic, and the simpler your desires, right, the less pressure you're going to put yourself under financially. And Sister White made this point, right? The home may be plain. You may have a plain home, a simple home, right? But it can always be a place where cheerful words are spoken and kindly deeds are done, where courtesy and love are abiding guests. You can make the home such a beautiful place, it's better than a king's palace because of the atmosphere that is there. Now, I want to finish this with a story, right? But before the story, just a couple of words of advice here. In Ephesians chapter 6, there is some interesting advice here. Okay, so the chapter starts with, children should obey parents in the Lord, honour father, etc. Now here on verse 4, it says, "And ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord." So yes, there are rules, and sometimes discipline needs to be administered. But always be careful not to provoke the children to wrath. And why? Right? Paul wrote something very similar to this to the Colossians as well, in chapter 3 and verse 21. Now, Colossians 3 is kind of, there's a lot written there about submission. But here in verse 21 it says, "Fathers, provoke not your children to anger, lest they be discouraged." There is a discipline that leads to discouragement. And that's the point of discipline, right? To become a disciple means to become a follower. To discipline means to kind of correct, right? To bring back into alignment. And sometimes in the home, we can bring in strife by by being harsh. And Sister White goes into this in Adventist Home. I won't read because of time, but there needs to be a balance, right? There has to be the sunshine, not only the clouds and the rain, and there has to be the right proportion. If everything is discipline, right, or firmness and limited love, there's going to be problems. If it's all love and no firmness, right, is not good either, right? There has to be firmness and love and firmness, right? You can summarize the two, but both are important. So the parents also should be subject to God. We have to submit ourselves to God, and even to each other, right? Because sometimes we might be wrong. The other one has to correct us. So the story goes, and I see some farmers here. So this is a story of on a farm. So there was a farmer, and he was sort of going about his things, and this car drives up, and out comes a man, and he walks over to the farmer, and he says, he introduces himself. I'm the regional inspector. I've come to inspect your farm and make sure everything is legal. I'm going to go around and make a report. And the farmer said, okay, just don't go into this paddock here. This inspector, you can't tell me what I can and can't do, right? I have the authority, right? And I've got a badge that gives me authority to enter any place at any time, and I can go wherever I want. So don't tell me what I can and can't do. So with that, he went off in a huff. And the farmer, he kind of went around his business, and a little later, he hears this yell, "Wah!" Here comes this inspector running. There was a bull chasing him. And he's coming up to the fence, and the farmer come up and he said, "Show him the badge." What's the point of the story? The point of the story is seek first to understand and then to be understood. If you listen first before you want to make your point, right, you're going to have much better success, not only in the family but in your life. This phrase, seek first to understand and then to be understood, was made famous in a best-selling book by Steve Covey called The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And what it means, right, you've got to understand people before you tell them your point. Right? You will have, and I have personally experienced this, you will have far better success as a child, as a son, as a brother, as a student, as a father, as a business leader, as a church leader, no matter what the context. Seek first to understand and then to be understood. Remember the badge, remember the point. And I wish that our homes are happy and that we can serve our families to God's glory.